Today we're going to be working on one of the more difficult points of English pronunciation, which is how to move from the R sound into different consonant sounds. Hi, I'm Josh, your American English guide, and this is English Hacks Pronunciation, where I help you to sound like a native, if you want, and to understand natural American speech better. So the topic for today's lesson comes directly from a subscriber named Ksenia L. Thank you very much for this question. Now, if you have not seen the main lesson for the R sound, definitely watch that first, because the way that I'm going to describe how to flow from the R to consonant sounds is going to be based on the way that I teach you to do the R in that main lesson. To start, I want you to first look at these examples. I am going to say each of these one at a time, and I want you to repeat after me for each one. But I want you to pay very close attention to what is happening in your mouth. Try to feel your tongue. Now, it doesn't matter too much if you do a bunched R or a retroflex R. I do a bunched R, so my description is going to be based on that. But if you do a retroflex R, it will be mostly the same. You just might have to make a few little changes. Either way, you want to focus on producing the right sound, and either R does not matter for the sound. So listen carefully and repeat after me. Another one. Another one. Covers. Covers. Other people. Other people. Energy. Energy. Smarter. Smarter. Now let's take a closer look at these examples, and I'm going to explain how it feels in my mouth so that you can better match the sound. So in our first example, another one. So first you want to go into that R sound from the TH, which by itself can be a little difficult, but we're going to say another. There, we pull back into that Then you're going to go from the to a W. Now, as I described in the main lesson, the lip part of the sound is optional. It's often used and it's very natural, but it's not required for the sound. So whether you use the lips or not, it doesn't matter, but we're going to be bringing the lips around for the W. So you want to focus mostly on your tongue for the R, and you want to hit that R before you bring the lips around. There. Maybe your lips are out for the R, that's okay. There. And this leads to something that I call an overlap. An overlap in linking, or the flow of sounds in English, is when you have two sounds going at the same time for a very, very small moment. And this usually tends to happen when you have a tongue sound and a lip sound. So the R is a tongue sound, the W is a lip sound. So we can actually do them both at the same time. So you're going to go into there, you're going to hold it there, your lips are going to come around for the W, and for just a quick moment, you're going to be saying like RW at the same time, okay? There, okay, regular W, it's more open inside, okay? So that R is still there, but again, just for a very small moment. You're then going to release the R in your mouth, let the full W come out, and then move into the not true schwa, the upside down V in IPA, in the word one. In the flow of real speech, even if it's not very, very fast, just normal speech, This change happens pretty quickly, but that's how you do it, okay? You don't want to say another one by separating them, so you'll have to practice coordinating the tongue and the lips together. We have a similar case with other people. Now here, p is a lip sound as well. We're using the lips a little differently, but you're going to be doing more or less the same thing. You want to go into that okay? Other, and then you just close the lips into the P, and before you release the P, you need to release the R in your mouth. Then when you push out the P, the R is not there, okay? It's just an R and a P. Other people, erp. So going from R to P, again, lips and tongue, you have to coordinate them at the same time. Now let's talk about the R sound plus a consonant that it also uses the tongue instead of the lips. This can be a little more difficult. In the word covers, we're going from to z, spelled with an S, but it's a Z sound. Even if it were an S, the physical movement would be the same because S and Z share the same position. Covers, What I'm doing here, I'm taking my tongue, again, I'm bunching it back right into that bunched R, or again, you can use the retroflex R. It's okay. That's going to affect it a little bit and you'll have to adapt, but I'm pulling back into the R, and then the SZ position, which I talked about in another lesson, is if you have your teeth here and you have top of your mouth, and then there's this part that goes up here, right? There's a bump here, okay? And you want your S or Z to more or less be lined up where if you were to close it, you'd basically be on that bump, just like the t, d, or n sounds. And the S, again, is really more about the shape and how the air flows. That's a whole different topic. But when you go from the which you're gonna have more space here, z, z. So I'm transitioning from this sort of tight R position, and I'm trying to keep that tenseness as I start to extend the tongue out. And that can be kind of difficult because as you extend, you have to release the tenseness in the tongue, but you sort of want to release the tension little by little as you extend into that Z position. Now, if you're using a retroflex R, it might be a little easier because you might just have to kind of bring your tongue up, but I don't use the retroflex R, and so I'm not exactly sure how that would feel in my mouth. It's actually uncomfortable for me to do a retroflex R. Either way, the point is that the sound is tense. It's a middle vowel sound using the middle of your tongue. It's tense, but then the S or the Z, you're gonna be using the front of your tongue up near the top of your mouth. So you just have to slide into that position without dropping the R and then doing it. So it's not z, cover z. You wanna push the R through the movement by gradually reducing the tension. In the word energy, this works pretty much the same, except instead of going to a Z, the ch and j sounds are a little farther back, more towards this part that starts to go up. So you actually don't have to extend as far forward. You're going urge. There's a little bit of forward, but it's mostly up, okay? You just want to get into that position. Again, don't completely drop the R and then do j. You want to sort of hold that tension as you extend forward, and then once you're in that position for the next sound, you can release the tension in the rest of the tongue. Urge. So it can be a little difficult to hold that tension as you transition, but it's just practice. And the last example is smarter. Now this is a very, very special case, and this is actually the most difficult, because not only do we have an R sound before the next consonant, but we have an R sound after the next consonant, and because the first one is an R-colored vowel, and the second one is the vowel, they're both vowels, what happens with the T when it's between two vowels and it's at the start of an unstressed syllable, or it's a weak T, it becomes a flapped D, okay, in American English, flapped D. Now going from R to flap D back into can be very, very, very difficult. So this is the one that might take you the longest to really get, and that's okay. So first we have R. Okay, so it's not just we're gonna do ah plus sort of blend them together and do the R-colored fifth vowel on the chart. Ah, R, R. If you don't know how to do that, I have another lesson that talks about the R-colored vowels. Once you're in that R, okay, you want to kind of shoot your tongue up and forward, and the flapped D that comes after an vowel sound or an R-colored vowel sound is not exactly the same flapped D that you find in other places. Like if I say, what about, what about. That's a really quick tap and you go into the next sound. It's very loose, very flowing. But because we have the tension in the sounds, R, and you want to keep that tension as you extend out, tap it, and then go back into the tension, it makes it really hard to very freely flow and tap. So we actually don't do that. It's going to slightly change the quality of that flapped D sound, but it's still going to be what we would recognize as a flapped D, more or less. So instead of going like smarter, because we have words like water, better, where we do a regular flap, but we pull into the changes the sound a little bit, but it's a regular tap, and then we pull into the That is where you might want to start, because if you can't do that, then it's going to be almost impossible for you to go from the R into So try that first. Make sure you have a good ability to tap and pull into the sound. Once you have that, also make sure that you can do R, okay? And if you can do that, you're gonna start putting them together. R. What I'm doing here, I'm going R into the sound. Then I'm extending up R. I'm kind of relaxing the tip a bit, and I'm allowing it to lightly sort of touch that point right before we go to this back part up here in the middle. So there's a bump and then that back part. And it's gonna touch, instead of flapping more up here, a little behind it, it's gonna flap a little bit farther back because we're going from the and trying to reach forward quickly. So we're gonna kind of just reach forward with the tip, tap it very lightly, and then pull back into the Arder, 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 smarter, smarter, smarter. You really have to have good tongue control and an ability to do at least a basic R in order to do this combination. This is the most advanced, most difficult thing that you can do with the R's. And as a bonus, let's look at one more really difficult one that's like smarter, but instead of R, let's do the R-colored O. Order, order. It's exactly the same. Instead of mixing ah and to R, you're going to mix O and to or. So again, make sure that you can do that first, but once you can do that, when you reach that end position of the okay, you're just going to, again, reach forward with the tip of the tongue, keep most of the tenseness here, tap it really quick, pull back into the Order, order, order. And what can actually happen here is you might not make solid contact with the tip of your tongue. As your mouth goes up and back here, your mouth this way, right? It's going this way and then it goes up and back. Now, instead of tapping right there, where there's the point that goes like that and your teeth are here, instead of tapping like that, what you can do is you can actually loosely touch with the sides of your tongue while keeping a little hole here so that only the tips tap, and that actually gives us a little more flexibility and we can speak a little bit faster, because instead of trying to get the whole tongue up to tap in that spot that starts going up here, we're actually going to end up doing sort of like this, order, smarter, okay? So you'll kind of tap like that. That might seem a little weird, and if that's confusing, don't worry about it. But there's a little bit of room for movement with the exact way that you do this. And again, the important thing is you want to be able to reproduce the sound. So however your mouth feels or whatever exactly you're doing with your tongue, as long as you're producing the right sound, then that's all that really matters. So focus on the sound and then make little micro adjustments and changes as you shadow words to try and match that sound better. Again, this is probably going to take a lot of practice, but you can get it. I can almost guarantee you. And I know you guys probably have some questions, so I can definitely answer those if you have any. But for now, thank you guys very much for watching another English Hacks lesson, and I'll see you in the next one.